Hello again. Today we have Kaveh, Albert, Meena, and we're talking about Sharia law and Islamification. So, Sharia law, what do we know about it? What is it?
So, Sharia law is basically the word to explain or to describe a legal system and a social system that's based on a particular religion's structure. So that would be Islam's. Sharia law historically meant during the time when Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, had conquered armies, and after his death, the rulers after that time basically instituted Sharia law. So it wasn't a law based on maybe legal precedents before them, but it was established pretty much based on what they as Muslims understood to be the way they should live. So people have to understand that Islam isn't just a philosophical religious system, so it's a whole of life system. Okay. So for a Muslim living in an Islamic society, there are, pretty much every aspect of his life can be touched by the way things ought to be done. And so Sharia law basically tries to codify that and to establish it within those rules, as understood by me as a Muslim learning the Quran, what's the hadith, what did the Prophet do, what ought I to do, what ought I not to do, and then saying, well, that should be the rules for all of us.
Okay, that sounds pretty comprehensive to me. Does anybody want to sort of add anything further to that?
No.
I don't know if it was comprehensive.
Firstly, I'm going to be a bit critical because we're talking about Sharia law, which is a pretty complex thing, but we don't have somebody that is. I consider myself not religious, secular, and I think you guys, no one's Muslim here, so we don't actually have somebody who would know about it religiously, socially, because they've been a part of the practice. I think that's a weakness in the panel. Okay, I just want to mention that. But in saying that, I come from Iran. Iran is a state which has Sharia law constituted in it. Sharia law are several points of law that are derived directly from the Quran, and they essentially they govern social and legal life for a Muslim or for a Muslim state. As time progressed, because the particular elements that were present were not enough to govern the complexity of modern society, they were subject to interpretations. The interpretations are done by qualified scholars within the different sects, predominantly Sunni and Shia. The scholarly and the process of becoming an Islamic scholar is multi-layered, but it is a process of Islamic education, theology, studies, and so on and so forth. However, essentially, it does fall at the end of the day with an individual who has been indoctrinated through a historical method of interpreting Islam and the point of laws that come to be, and then they make a call.
So, Kaveh, are you suggesting that it's really the individual's interpretation of Quran and
No, not the individuals, however, the lineage.
Right.
The lineage of thought.
Right.
Yeah. So, for example, if you go to Qom, which is the center of Shiite scholarly studies, you will have Ayatollah Montazeri, who was a prominent leader, passed away in 2010, if I'm not wrong, who would have a particular approach to a certain element, but somebody else would counter that approach, and that school of thought would be slightly different to this school of thought. So even within the same city, on a particular issue, you will have two perspectives, and then the followers of one individual would then take up that perspective as opposed to another. And this is how refined, how defined it can be. Refined it can be, sorry.
Could we compare it maybe to different denominational differences in Christianity, say?
Yeah, but it
So
differs.
sacramental as opposed to non-sacramental.
Yeah, but a difference because the way it expresses itself. We don't have that in Christianity anymore. We don't have any society or any Christian country, so to speak,
no Christian
that
theocracy.
sits there. Yeah, like in the
Separation
same
of church
way
and state.
that say Saudi Arabia is,
Yeah.
or purports to be,
Yeah.
and the way, for example, an Iran purports to be
Yeah.
in its behaviour. So Sharia law basically means a society run with the idea that you are having your learned people, your academics, understand the Quran, understand the Hadith, understand what it means to be a Muslim in the best way that we as a Muslim society can live under these rules and laws, and then codifying that. So it's very important to understand that you're codifying it rather than I'm just a Muslim leader and this is my suggestion, you can think about it or not.
It's constituted.
Yes.
It's
codified, yeah.
It enters the constitution, becomes law,
Yeah,
becomes
that's right.
hard law. The consequences of that, I guess, are grim,
Yeah.
to say the least. Because and this is not to say it's one particular religion against another. I personally take it that I'm secular. I don't consider myself a religious person. However, I believe any religion that finds its way into the mainstream of a society, whether it's through the legal system or otherwise, and it dictates some fundamental elements within that society, it becomes problematic. And I give you an example. I want to give you an example here where a religion hasn't been constituted into the legal system per se, but it still has such a strong influence on the culture that it is. I'm quoting a friend of mine. It is suffocating. Poland. The church has such control over the society and the institutions within the society.
Even though it's not a constituted.
Even though it's not Christian law,
Yeah.
but it has such control over society, and the moral decisions that are made. The political decisions that are made according to whether the church believes it to be morally correct, necessary, right, wrong, so on and so forth, where it exerts its influence in that way, and then political decisions made or are unmade, and so on and so forth. And that's it becomes an issue in that society, and this is you hear this from a lot of Polish people that come out and actually.
Is that necessarily a bad thing though? If it is a righteous or moral system to have?
Well, you have a lot of Polish people running away saying, "I don't want to be in this society."
and for me, I also wouldn't want to be in a Christian society if that whatever that would
No,
mean.
I much appreciate separation of church and state, but for me, it's hypothetically speaking. Is there a world you could live in where a theocracy is workable?
No.
Unless everybody was of a particular.
But you know
like
what?
theocratic
It doesn't
understanding.
even
Can I
happen.
answer a question with a question? Do you need a religious book to tell you what is right and wrong these days?
You don't need
You don't need it, but it might influence it.
And
that certainly
it is a
shapes.
good guide. And like I mean, for as a sort of moral compass, moral direction, not just a religious book, but some religious leadership and that sort of thing. But I'm definitely of the opinion that it needs to be separated from influencing decisions, because not everybody believes in the same faith or line of faith or line of doctrine that I believe in. So it needs to be.
And I also like
Yeah.
not being told what to do.
Yeah.
Like I always appreciate the idea that I live in a society that lets me go to church if I want to, and lets me not go to church if I want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I
You're not
appreciate
doing
that
enough.
more. That's
Yeah.
right.
You're not
And I'm
doing
not,
enough.
and I appreciate that more. And I think if we go back to the topic of the thing I always want to say when people say, is Australia being Islamified?
Well, yeah, I want to pose this question with this political climate that's out there at the moment. people are scared, right? People like, obviously the media's got a lot to play with it. Obviously, sort of the events and what's going on has happened, and lots of talk is, if we don't act on this now, in 10, 15 years, there will be Sharia law run through Australia. Do you think this is a real threat?
To me, this is rubbish.
Yeah.
This is just such utter rubbish, and I'll tell you why. First off, and this is what people don't realise, Muslims only constitute 2 to 3% of the population in this country.
Yeah.
Out of the 2 to 3% that would call themselves Muslim, all right, you probably have the same sort of percentage as Christians. So, you know, I think the last stats were that 64% identified with Christian, and only 10% of those attend a church.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to be Christian? On the outside, you know, I go to church. Say for a Muslim, I go to prayer, you know, and that I would, for example, not drink alcohol, and I don't eat pork, and I go to Hajj. Maybe that's on a very bland, on the surface way. That's what it means to be a Muslim. Okay, so really, what we're saying is 2% of the population are Muslim when all they have to do is write it on a paper, and I don't care if you know it or not. All right, and of those 2%, maybe only, you know, again 10 to 15% would, on the surface,
Will actually
pray, go to the Hajj, and then of those, if you said to them, should we make the whole country, you know, follow our laws, you're going to get a percentage of that, and then of those, who would be determined to do things?
Yeah.
All right. Like, am I going to smash up a bottle shop?
That's really sorry to cut you off, man. That's a really good way to insignify it. It's to understand how small it is. However, it's political capital.
That's it. That's
It's
what it
political
is.
capital, and it's a very opportunistic way to approach it, and put a lens over it, and
this is just another talk of the other. Weren't we afraid of the Chinese 15 years ago?
And
When our politicians
Yeah.
coming out in speeches and saying, "We've got to be careful. The Chinese are going to come in such numbers. There's not going to be any more Australians."
What about the
And then the
communism?
Japs. No. Remember, the Japs were going to buy Queensland.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
We were scared. The Japs were going to buy Queensland, and before that, the Indos are going to invade us.
Yeah.
But if
And
it's,
before that, those Greeks and Italians. There's too many of them. We're all going to be like grease heads,
Yeah.
eating spaghetti and eating, you know, feta cheese. I don't know. Oh my God, they're scared me.
Yeah.
Before that was the Irish, the scumbag Irish. They're coming out here with their Catholicism and their potatoes and the alcohol. I don't know what's going to happen. So we're always afraid of the other. After a while, the Muslims will become a part of the fabric of society. There'll be a new group, in my opinion, and I'm putting my hand up because it's 2014, and you say, I knew first, Black Africans. The Black Africans will be the new boogeyman. I'm telling you. Because, you know what? There's nowhere else in the world. You know, we've had we've had the Wogs from Western Europe, we've had the Vietnamese, we've had the boat people who were scared they were all going to sell heroin to our kids. That didn't happen. We're scared of the Chinese, that's not going to happen, the Indos. Then we went and found the Muslims and the Arabs. There's nowhere else in the world, unless we get some South Americans that were going to all make us do salsa and chop our heads off, you know, in their Los Zetas gangs, and make us snort cocaine, or it's going to be the Black Africans.
Yeah, but Albert,
so the other will come again
Hang on.
to scare us.
so so if it's so insignificant and a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, how do you end up with, as you said earlier off air, but how do you end up with Sharia law in the family law context in Britain? You see, the Greeks and the Irish and the rest of them that came across here all respect Western common law, and that's it.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the context of family, criminal, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So then, I mean, that sort of, to me, does, again, allow the fear to bubble a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think they're just being loud, yeah.
So, I want to respond to that. I want to just take. I'll respond to that, and I want to take it a step back with some interesting things we were talking about before. When it's the fear of the other, I think is a social issue, and the fear of the other can only be tackled with education. Yeah, we live in a society. We live in a country, I should say. Sorry, that is governed by a political system, which I think, against the backdrop of the progression that's been made in some parts, in a lot of parts of the world, of the developing world, I think our political culture is very short-sighted. It's term by term. It's very cross-bench politics.
Yeah.
One person comes, wants to make a difference, wants to introduce a national broadband system, something that's been around in Europe for a decade, and then it's kicked out. Someone comes and we know that the environment is something we need to take care of. Someone else comes and kicks it out. These are major decisions about our future. We don't invest in it. Just like that, we don't invest in education. And for as long as you don't invest in education, there's two things. There's I'm going to refer to the textbooks here. This is political theory. It's social political theory, where you have choices of how to control the public. You can either invest in the public through the social system, and this actually doesn't favor big business, massive corporations, TNCs and transnational corporations, because ideologically it comes closer to social democracies like Sweden, Norway, so on. Okay, you have other ways. Religion is a good way to contain the masses, because obviously we say it's religion, and we
stop arguing.
We do this for God. It's a theocracy. Another way is actually keeping people in poverty, because poverty, people that are poor will always go to religion, and they can just keep on praying for a better life.
Well, you know,
government dependent.
Well, in this society, we don't even have religion. I'll go to the pub and I'll gamble a bit.
That's right. And I don't want to. I'll wrap it up. My point. I'll get my point across. Another way is by keeping the masses ignorant and not educated.
Yes.
Okay, and giving them the basics of what they need. This is called the middle class syndrome, where we're experiencing this middle class syndrome in Australia, where we are satisfied with the average house and the average car, paying off
average education,
and we take what the media tells us. We're never going to get over this hurdle. Okay, how we responded to a terrorist attack, which was minor against the face of what happened in Canada. How we responded was we turned a nation upside down on its head for about 4 weeks. People were at each other's.
We're at war. Our Facebook figures are at war. This is why we're here.
Okay, this is in comparison to. Did you see the statement made by the opposition leader in Canada? You guys have to see this. He stood there for 10 minutes essentially, and again, I won't be doing this to justice, but essentially saying, we in Canada are not going to be affected by these minorities. We will stand the free people. We will be accepting. We will not other. We will not discriminate. And this is what makes us Canadians.
But this is the thing: is that I'm not afraid of the other. I'm not afraid for people from overseas to come here. What I'm afraid of is that my legal system, the 800 years or so of common law, for it to be turned on its head.
But if you're afraid of your legal system being affected by 2% of a 2% of a population, then you have. I think. Sorry, again, I say I'm making a very passionate statement, but I think you have to find more confidence in that legal system.
Correct.
This is not a legal system that could break. However, I want to address this because I feel passionate about this. Is there a social issue within pockets of society, within pockets of this particular city, because we live here, that are issues that are serious, they need to be addressed, they need to be dealt with? Yes. Are they issues that stem from religion? They stem from nationality or ethnicity? My argument is no. I think they're social issues that need, because the 90%, 95% of those people that express extremism are actually born in Australia. A huge majority of those people that arrive here after being raised overseas are those who prosper. Okay, because they have a comparative reference point in terms of what we had and what we have. Okay, so we have an issue that's social. It's a social issue. It's a domestic issue. However, we want to pass responsibility onto a faraway land and a faraway religion. Man, if we're not investing, if we're cutting funding, we're cutting funding to education, we're cutting funding to the very.
But this affects everyone. And
But it doesn't affect everybody. It doesn't affect those who have access to the market. It doesn't affect if you've had your mum here and you're lucky enough to have access to education. It doesn't affect somebody who has had enough push or enough support to get somewhere. It affects the fringes of society. So whenever you touch social systems, the ones in terms of the class system, the ones that are sort of middle, lower to middle, are not going to be so much not going to be affected as much as the fringes in society. Those are the ones that are going to go deeper in this cycle.
It probably doesn't help Kaveh when you're talking about Team Australia.
And we don't know
the language.
you know what I mean? Like, so then here's I express this from a heuristic point of view, experience point of view. I came here as an immigrant child. I came here as a refugee. I was a refugee stateless for 2 years. I wasn't educated for 2 years in Turkey. We ran across the border. My parents are political dissidents, and we came here. I was 13. At 13 years old, I experienced. Somebody said to my parents, we lived in Liverpool. This is a funny thing. This is again. This is the superiority complex of some immigrants. We are Persian. We are Iranian. We are not like them immigrants. Don't send your kid to Liverpool. There's too many immigrants in Liverpool. Send your kid to school in Vaucluse. Man, they sent me to Vaucluse. I experienced a cultural shock that affected me for a long time.
But that's the inherent culture of the state. That's the problem. See, this is where I can't go to Saudi Arabia. Right, this is my bigger concern. I can't go to Saudi Arabia and try to influence their legal system, or even if it's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction, because in some instances we've seen that people have ceded. We've seen that states have ceded.
I think you can make noise, but it just won't be given the wings.
But the noise in the Western country has been given.
It's been given the wings, but why has it been given wings? I think the question. Why has it been given this wings?
You're making a comparison to Saudi Arabia, a state that's essentially been there for 1400 years. Okay, that has its legal system
indoctrinated.
But this is the same thing with Western world. It goes back to 1200.
And this is okay. So you said let me rephrase that. It has a cultural continuity.
So does the Western. No. The common law system is inherently tied to Western cultural identity.
The common law system is something that's imported onto a land that has a continuity of 50,000 years, according to Dream Times, which is an Aboriginal legal system.
Colonialism.
But this is a land. Hold on, you have to accept this is a land that is built on immigrants. You have a nation of 200 plus years, not a nation of 1400 years.
Take even the 200 years then. Take even the 200 years then. Okay, it was always Western common law tradition.
Yeah.
But that's coming from somewhere.
But you're talking.
That's imported.
But you're talking.
Okay, take the United Kingdom.
You're talking about. If we're talking about, I think we already addressed the fact that no one is going to really influence this legal system.
But we're
this
seeing
legal
that
system
it has
is very
been
strong.
influenced.
I think it's not the legal system. I think we have a social issue.
I'm not disagreeing.
I think there is no way, and we have no record, absolutely no record of. And I'll shed some light on what you guys said about the British family law being changed by Sharia law. We have absolutely no record anywhere in the world where Sharia law has penetrated the
not in its
fundamental
entirety.
system. Yeah, not at all.
You could say. I mean, I don't know the exact details, but you could say in terms of Islamic finance that it's not very synonymous with Western capitalism.
Yeah, but I think that's putting too much credit into the cover. I would also bet back Kaveh and that, like, we have to be a bit mindful not to be scared that something Islamic appeared.
No, I'm saying it's inconsistent with what was already here.
But what isn't maybe capitalism? When corporations first come up, people were saying the same thing about corporations.
Okay,
this is inconsistent
let me put another proposition
with our lifestyle. Who is making these laws giving power to
Australia? Only knew steak and veggies 50 years ago. They used to laugh at Greeks for eating seafood. What are you eating? You guys are weird. You're eating stuff. You're eating snails. Yeah. This is something you're talking about, a banking system that is working. If let's say that you're talking about the Arab Bank of Australia, for example, is working.
Westpac was thinking.
It is working within the system. Therefore, it is inherently abiding by the laws.
Yeah.
If you're talking about
because they made laws for it, but
I mean, these laws are passed through a Senate. I'll just wrap this up through a democracy. Yeah. However, if we can the family laws that we're talking about in Britain and here and Sharia law penetrating those, these penetrating those closed communities that haven't been given the mechanisms to integrate into a society that's saying
No,
to me, hold on, let
sometimes
me
they're
finish
choosing
this.
not to
Sorry,
integrate, but
let
go
me say
on.
this. A society that's yelling, you have to be Australian, however, is not accepting you. Yeah?
No,
There
but
is an irony.
that's the clash. Is
No.
that see? And this goes back to one of
No,
the
no.
other discussions. Sorry if I make a proposition
please.
too. Is that if you look at the cultural conflict, say in Iraq, where you've got it's split Sunni, Shia, Kurds, right? They have no national unity, no singular cultural identity that can drive them forward. What happens then when you get a melting pot of these different legalistic systems, different financial views, different this? It's going to be disharmonious, and it's going to be very, very difficult to reconcile all these various,
I don't necessarily think so.
Yeah, look,
because that's a
I
history.
can't-
That's history.
I can't
That's
comment
history.
to.
Can I just jump in? I'd like you to shed a little bit of light on the Sharia law as you see it in England, and then I think we should wrap it up just for time reasons.
Just to finish up on that example, I don't think we're equipped enough to talk about those regions to that depth. What I can say is I come from Iran, which is 52% Persian, which is the ethnicity, but it has 48% of Turks, Kurds, Arabs. We have Lors, and we have Gilanis, and we have minorities. Okay, that's something that's there. It is work. It is under a dictatorship. How those elements come to be, they have to be assessed much more under a historic lens, and we won't do it justice. However, in this society, from my own experience,
do they have a unified national, a system that's applicable to all without exclusion?
Identity, again, like I said, Eastern democracies. A theoretical perspective on Eastern democracy is something that is missing in literature, and that is because of the historical situation of colonialism. Therefore, we can't really talk about that. However, in terms of the social disintegration, we are living in a society which is cutting funding to mechanisms that are to encourage integration, and then screaming, why aren't you integrating?
No, but
we're telling
I'm
people,
happy-
we're telling people, become Australian, but we don't accept you because you're whatever you are. We're gonna treat you, we're gonna be racist. We're gonna kick you off the boats. We're gonna call you, then we're asking you to integrate. We have an issue with our social spending. We're putting money into the pockets of corporations instead of our own society.
No,
and then we're asking why we have
I
social
agree.
issues.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, thank you very much. That went a little bit out of control, but that was some fun. That was some fun. All right. Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much.